We're going to have a nice discussion today about basically diversity in the military and talking about kind of DEI in the military, what people experience, what people have seen. We have our guest today, and I will let them actually go ahead and introduce themselves. There we go. Everybody good? All right. First up, Michael. Do you want to say hello?
Hi, everyone. My camera will be off because yesterday Phil and I found out that if I were to use both my mic and camera, I cut in and out really bad. But I'm Michael Castor. I served in the Army Reserves as a civil affairs specialist. And easiest way for that to describe that is I'm just a diplomat for the Army or any other branch that I get assigned to. It's a fun job. Really keeps you thinking on your feet, and you get to meet a whole bunch of new and unique people along the way. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
What's your major at Flint? I forgot to write this down yesterday.
I am a social studies TCP major, so teaching middle school and high school. Once I get out, I believe winter 2022 will be my last semester at U of M Flint. Mainly I chose the job in the military and the degree because they go hand in hand. I can use the history, the politics, the geography, even the economics that I learned from my degree to help me with civil affairs when I meet people. If I ever go on deployment, I'll be able to understand their history, the region, possibly give some economic advice to the leaders that I talk with. Just some really simple, but I want to say simple, but at the same time, it's hard because, as we all know, people are unique in the way they think. What might work with one person won't necessarily work with the other. So I have to keep on my toes a lot with thinking about how I can use my degree and my civilian and my military job together.
Did you join before you went into college or while you were in college?
I joined before. I joined right out of high school in 2013.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julia Coxon. I am a Colonel 06 in the U.S. Army. I am currently active duty, and I am typically a signal officer, but generally speaking, right now I'm a PhD student, and I'm on my way to go up to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point to be a professor there when I'm done with my PhD duties. I've been stationed all over the world and across the U.S., been deployed multiple times as well. And yeah, have a lot of experiences across like gender diversity and obviously also across like ethnic diversities as well, but happy to talk about anything. And this is my second time serving on one of these panels. And so I have a little bit of experience, I guess, but I'm happy to answer any questions and happy to have an honest conversation about it.
Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie. I was in active duty Air Force, and now I'm in the reserves. I'm an operations analyst. So I just kind of depends on where I'm at. It depends on my job. I did my undergrad here in computer engineering, and I'm doing my master's in computer engineering as well, focusing on embedded systems.
Hello, everyone. William Kirkland. I did 8 years as a SEAL. So any questions you have about that, it's cool. No big deal. But definitely not answering the did you kill anyone question. Like, let's get that out the way. I'm not answering that. All right. And it's very inappropriate to ask people that. So just throw that out there. But right now I'm in part-time MBA at Ross. So I got out in 17, did a little bit of contracting, but wanted to figure out, it was either this or law school. So even though I was enlisted, I had my degree already, and a lot of people go into spec ops with having the degree already. So, and happy to talk about anything.
Cool. Thank you. Matt.
Hi there, I'm Matt Preston. So I was active duty Air Force and then went active duty Army after a little bit of time out. I was loadmaster in the Air Force and an Apache crew chief in the Army. Spent some time in Afghanistan, got out after my Army time and decided to go to school. I did my undergrad in Indianapolis at IUPUI, and now I'm here at Michigan for law school at the University of Michigan.
In case you didn't see it, there he is. Matt's way up on top.
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that, actually. I shouldn't have sent you that.
Yeah, absolutely. I like it. I like it. Well, we all did stuff we weren't supposed to do. That was half the fun. Just don't get caught. All right. So this is our panelist today. I'm going to put it back on kind of full screen for everybody. There we go. And just let's talk a little bit about let's get into the DI stuff of let's start at the beginning. Like when you joined, where you came from, what was it like from a diversity experience? Because remember, there's a lot of folks out there who haven't served and have not gone through basic training or OCS. So what was that experience like for you of joining and being kind of thrust in the middle of people who maybe did not look, think, worship, act, etc. like you do? Who wants to start?
Sure. I'll take it. Yeah, it was a complete 180. So I grew up in a predominantly, African American area in the like DC area. So I grew up maybe to about 10 years old in DC. I called it Chocolate City for a reason. And then we moved out to Maryland. So right in Prince George's County area out there, it's just middle class, kind of suburban, black folk for the most part. And going from that to enlisting, going to boot camp, and then all, SEAL boot camp class, it was 98% Caucasian. So, and that same trend happened within the SEAL teams, going through SEAL training, as well as at the SEAL team and deployment, stuff like that. So, I mean, you were used to it at a certain point, and also there's the gender aspect as well. So, operating within the SEAL teams, there wasn't any women back then. So, and there hasn't been a woman yet. So, you're operating in very, guy dominated areas. You may have maybe an officer who's a supply type officer or something like that, where you're interacting with other genders, but it's very, quote unquote boys club stuff. So yeah, there wasn't much diversity at all. And I never felt any, racism or anything of that nature, because we're dealing with life and death. So there's no room for that. So maybe within other professions they might kind of feel some of that, but I never felt it. I mean, you may get your off-colored jokes every now and then. Oh, they listen to country, I listen to hip hop or something, playful stuff, but yeah, nothing too crazy.
Well, I actually have a question for you. I know I'm on the panel, but just started the conversation. So I don't know how it works for the SEALs, but in the Army, to join the Green Berets, whatever, you have to spend a certain amount of time as like a, line soldier or something.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have to do that in the Navy as well? Like, did you spend it? Like, I was curious if you had any experience like in the conventional population versus in the SEALs. No. And how that differed. Or maybe
Yeah.
you interacted with conventional folks.
That's a good question, honestly. No, so before, so some of the older SEALs, they had to have a MOS before, but I think it was either 03, 05 time frame, and I joined in 2010. SEAL became its own MOS, so it had a direct pipeline. So I depped in with the contract in hand that I had a chance at Buds. But
Right.
the reverse aspect of that now is people going undesignated. So if you don't make it through, you go to needs of the Navy and you get a pretty crappy job out there. So
So you heard
yeah,
it.
yeah, you don't want to do that for sure. And then they kind of mess with you because, oh, you thought you were a SEAL kind of deal, and now you're back in the fleet. So yeah, it's pretty rough up there. But
No, that's helpful.
somebody else, I don't know if you.
I'm already talking, so I might as well talk.
Diversity, yeah,
Yeah.
diversity as an officer, one OC woman, yeah, that's
Well, I would say, and this is maybe a common theme from last year. I don't want to like, excuse me, be too hard, but you mentioned it actually in your comments that, and it may maybe it's oversimplifying to say you didn't, observe or experience any racism. And I think I would probably say the same thing, and it's probably oversimplifying it because over 22 years of being in the Army, I'm sure I experienced some racism. But I think what's common among some of the military folks that I talk to is that there is this sort of like laser focus on the mission and these objective characteristics that you have to meet in order to get the mission done. Like, I have to carry my ruck. No one's going to carry my ruck for me. Can you carry your ruck? Okay, let's go. And so that has nothing to do with what's inside of the uniform. I mean, it has nothing to do with like what I look like under there. It's just I got to get the mission accomplished. And so I think universally across the military, there is a component of that, which makes it easier. And the uniform itself is actually very unifying in a lot of ways. But I wouldn't go so far as to say that I experienced nothing. And certainly within the last year, I've been reflecting on that a lot more. And just trying to think of ways that I can be, a better ally, especially as a leader, and, just be a better leader in that way and be a good example. So I've been thinking about that a lot more, with the recent protests and everything, and trying to think of ways that I can still in an apolitical fashion, of course, but be a good ally for folks that are in my formation. And I'll just end this little spot by saying that, like, I often talk to like junior officers that are getting ready to lead formations. And when I talk to folks, recently I had a chance to talk to a group of cadets at West Point, and they are of this particular population. They are the ones that are being, they are of minority demographics within the cadet population, but they're being groomed for other things. Anyway, so I got a chance to talk to them, and I said, you're going to go out and you're going to be leaders, and you're not going to look like a lot of your leaders. And sometimes that's really hard because you don't see yourself in the people that you want to become. And sometimes that can be like a really challenging place. And so what I challenged them with and what I told them is like, what you have to remember is that means also that the people that you're leading also don't look like you. And so as a leader, you have to like find a way to find that common ground between you and the people that you're leading, and you and the ones that you want to become, in order for you to sort of make that connection and, obviously like get the mission accomplished. But I think it's a very delicate balance, and it's something that's still challenging to this day. So I'll stop there though. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll piggyback off of what both you're saying. I think the military is this like unique microcosm. Like, I think that there's like, there are cultural divides in the military. I've been reflecting on this a lot, in the recent times, and I think like things that I saw then, I didn't think anything of it, that now I look back and I'm like, oh, that wasn't okay, right? Like, it's different there for so many reasons that some of you kind of touched on. But I think like I remember thinking back, like, oh, like, because I'm a very white passing Latino, and so people will like say like, oh, you're Mexican, like things like that, but in the military, it's like there's a it's like people make fun of each other's like unique features sometimes. So like, it's like in an endearing way. And it's a lot different, and that's not necessarily the case, and that's not necessarily a good thing, you know. But it's like very common there, and that's not the way it is, at least from my perception, in the civilian world, where like that's not appropriate, like those kinds of things. And so, you know, there's, you know, like you said, like there's this laser focus on the mission there, and I think that laser focus is good and bad. It's good in that it bridges like people together in like this common goal in this mission. But I also think that it presents problems because like when you're just so focused on the mission, you don't take time to stop and think like, oh, is this something that I should like bring up or complain about? Or is this something that we need to talk about like as a group, like the way that we're talking about or characterizing people certain color, like the jokes that we make, the nicknames that we give people and stuff like that. And I don't necessarily know, I don't want to make a normative position on whether that's okay, like in the military context. I think where it becomes really problematic is after people get out, because that way becomes a part of you, right? And so you come out and you can't talk or act the way that you did when you were in the military, and about a lot of things, you know, not just you know, race and gender and sexual orientation issues, but like things like firearms and stuff like that too, right? Like there's a lot about that culture that is like that doesn't carry outside of that context. And so I think these are the kinds of conversations that we need to keep having now, like us that are out, especially because, you know, like you know, we emphasize that there's people that are in are like laser focused on this really important mission, and so they're probably not having these conversations, and I think that they are important to have, and because I've observed. I wouldn't necessarily call it like racism, you know, that, but maybe like microaggressions that are maybe like a little bit more aggressive than micro, like in that, you know, and that I think like if I saw that out here, I would say, hey, like that's not okay. And so, yeah, these are really difficult conversations, though.
I definitely agree with what everybody's saying, and I would say so. My career field is like dominated by men, by males. So it's like, you know, I'm one of the few, usually I've been one of the few or the only female working, and I also work behind a vault. So that's like, it brings in more of the, not safe space, but, you know, everything that kind of is said or is done is kind of like in this area where nobody else is just gonna like come in. So you can't, you know, you're not thinking, oh, some random person's gonna like hear what I'm saying and think, oh, I need to be careful. It's just kind of like a little safe spot for you, I guess. And I would say, at least, I think in general, that this career field that I'm a part of, for example, would probably be very different as far as the sensitivity of how things are said goes for other career fields, like I'm just gonna say like a dental hygienist, which a lot of them are, I think that I've seen, are women, right? So it's like more the population, there would be like more women working in that career field. So I think that has a lot to do with it, the actual job that you're a part of, because it can literally be like night and day from what I've seen with the Air Force. But yes, I agree. I mean, there's also a level of desensitizing that happens in the military for everything, right? Like from like what Matt was saying with the comments to things like people dying. There's just, because of that whole laser focus of the mission, you know, you can't, and the military bearing of the things, you can't just break down if something bad has happened. You kind of have to like internalize it yourself, and that's it. You got to keep going. And then I would say in general, for what I've seen, just the commenting on diversity and, you know, where you come from and everything else, like what you see there, obviously there's the difference in race and gender, etc. I was not born in the US. I moved as a kid to Miami. So it was like very much Latino growing up all the way. My first like very much American experience was my freshman year before I joined. And then when I joined, obviously completely different than everything I was used to. Then I was shipped to Germany, so another place that's like not like home at all. But what I noticed through it all, through basic, through tech school, through my duty stations, is sometimes the actual like where you come from culturally is more impactful in how you deal with things than like your actual race or your gender. So, you can be female or male or whatever. But, you can, I think what's more impactful is like, did you grow up close to your family at all times? Does that make you miss your family a lot more than somebody who didn't, regardless of who you identify as a gender, or if you are your age or anything else, right? So I think that the whole, like, what you're used to, what have you been exposed to growing up, I think those things are the things that that I've seen anyway, with like junior airmen coming in, and they're having a hard time dealing with X, Y, and Z just because of where they come from as far as their culture goes, more than anything else.
That's such an interesting point, Stephanie, because like, I'm not sure if it was you and I, we talked about it before, but I know that like in certain group settings, I know that there's some leadership that gets frustrated because, they get some pressure or something to say like, oh, we have to have diverse teams, right? Which means that I get picked for a lot of things when it's like we are constantly, getting shuffled into things. Like I had to serve on probably more than my share of like, UCMJ boards and all that kind of stuff, because you have to have diversity in certain places. And that's not just the only thing, but we all know that problem solving is better, teamwork is better when you have diverse teams. But a lot of times our teams look very homogenous. And so I've talked in the past a lot with my teams is that like we have to be conscious of trying to build in different types of diversity, because it's not just demographic diversity, like you're saying. Of course, there's like the demographic part, but there's like the socioeconomic diversity, and that changes the problem solving skills and your perspective on things. And there's, in my world, it was like, have you had any soft experience or you didn't have any soft experience? Do you have any intel experience? You don't have any intel experience. Were you part of the conventional force? What was your MOS? Were you in the Army or the Navy? Like there's so many different types of diversity in the teams that we can build, but I don't think we always like go out of our way to try to incorporate that into like, our problem solving and stuff as much as we should.
Michael, did you want to chime in?
Yeah. So I can honestly say in my company right now, on one hand, I'm able to count the number of Hispanics, women, African Americans, and that's really it on one hand, and that's using all 5 fingers. I'm not saying that civil affairs is a bad MOS for diversity. It's like William said, they place you where the needs of the Army, the needs of the military need you. And we just recently got our 5th female, and who is also our first female officer. And I'm really excited to see what she's going to bring to the table, because she's my new team leader. I'm really excited to work with her and come till March when I get out. Even then, I've had my first African American team leader too, and he's really gung-ho. I've learned a lot from him, and I know he's learned a lot from us, because when he first got in, he was sitting behind a desk and wasn't doing a whole lot. Like, he wasn't even given a whole lot. He told us that. But even that experience he brought to the team, showing us how to fill out proper documents and forms. And it's like, how do I want to put it? That small amount of diversity that we have in my company, even though it is small, makes a huge, huge impact, because it's given us that look into their lives and how other people treat them. I was out with my team once doing an area assessment of Novi, and we're just walking past one of the fire departments, and someone yelled, "Hey, use the N-word, get out of here." And we like all shocked, and we look at my team leader. We're like, "You okay, sir?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I heard that a lot growing up. It's not okay, but I just hear it. I've heard it so much in my life." And it shows that even though like myself and my team, my company, and the rest of us in the military are okay with all these different races, ethnicities, and cultures, it's still out there. And it's something that honestly, in my opinion, is not going to go away anytime soon. It's like if we can change one person at a time, then eventually it will go away. And just bringing more people into and showing them how diversity can help will help, in my opinion, help change their minds.
I think there's another aspect to it, at least for certain jobs in the military, because there's a metric based inclusion, and what I mean by that is you become a SEAL if you meet certain criteria. So can you swim, can you run, can you do certain things? So it's not like they're choosing, oh, just because you're African American, we need more diversity over here, so now you can come over here. It's no, you have to meet the certain wickets first. So there's there's already truncating the available pool, where it's like most people, they did a study where most people who become SEALs are either wrestlers, swimmers, or like X Games people. So it's like, look at the people who do those type of things, and that's you're already truncating the available diversity pool. So that was one thing I just wanted to chime in on. It's like, yeah, you want certain diversities in certain areas, but can you really achieve certain diversities if the people who are trying to do those things aren't diverse to begin with? So that's just part of it. And then the other part was that I heard Michael say was just when you hear certain things, or there was a certain thing within our culture where it was like we trained with our officers, and I'll give y'all a little story where it's like the certain things that we said to our officers or we said to certain people, like we probably get court-martialed for it if we were in a different part of the military, where it was like, if I had a problem with an 05 or an 04, even 03 as an enlisted E5, I could tell him, hey, dude, I got a problem with you, man. Like, versus somewhere else, it's like you can't do that at all, because it's not that same kind of culture where we were so close together, we trained together, we give our officers crap all the time. And it was a bit different where other places is, so that's why I was just maybe a little bit more insulated, where within the soft community or special operations, like Julia said, is a very insulated culture. So I didn't receive a lot of it. So when I say like I didn't receive that, is because they knew if they said the N-word, like I would punch somebody in the face. So, and we could throw the gloves on and we could step outside. Like that was the culture. So people knew not to do that, or it's just the type of people who became, soft type people, they're already weeding out the foolishness going through the test gates. So I just wanted to offer that.
Yeah, you don't think he had a lot of room for foolishness.
Right.
What you're doing, right?
Right.
I'm sorry, I just got hung up. What was you said swimmers, wrestlers, and who?
X Games. So like, motocross,
Okay.
skateboarders, stuff like that. People who just don't have much fear in them. I don't see how they could do some of that, jumping motorcycles and stuff. But yeah, a lot of it was X Games swimmers, or motocross, soccer. Soccer was another thing as well.
So interesting, because if you ran the numbers on that, right? I'm an engineer, like you would probably find that you are excluding like a really large part of the diverse population, right? Because that that's a huge barrier to entry to all those sports, right? And
Right. For sure.
and if you looked across demographics, I'm sure you'd be able to exclude a huge proportion of that. But I think for like this is something that I'm very passionate about, and I've had many conversations with in the past, and I'm happy to talk about more detail. But I would just offer that, like, to overcome something like that really takes like top-down leadership to say, I am going to prioritize diversity, and I'm going to make that more important, not necessarily than the wickets that you have to pass. Of course, you have to pass those wickets, but I'm going to normalize it so that that diversity is more important, and then we will shuttle them through the rest of this process. Because to say that person X didn't have the potential to become a good swimmer, diver, or whatever is probably not fair. Like, did they get the opportunity? Have they ever had an opportunity to do those things? Then give them the opportunity. Then you can slice them after that, if they didn't give it their all after that point. But there's some things I know in my experience as well. We have like a year-long operational training course to get into the unit that I was in. And we would leave so many people by the wayside because they didn't make some sort of arbitrary requirement or something. And we left so much talent on the cutting room floor that it just makes me cry to think about it. But a lot of times it was a talent mismatch for sure. And in some cases it was like this sort of like really arbitrary dedication to these systems and processes that we have to get people into these units, right? It's like a little bit of badge protecting. But also it was like the sort of like prioritization. Where I've seen it done very well though in certain cases is that like, where folks are able to somehow, instead of like gender neutral, and this is, I'm specifically talking about gender stuff, like making things gender neutral, making it sort of like gender normative. And so recognizing like, I need, like, Will and I going into country X makes a lot more sense than Will and Matt going into country X together, right? And so like, I'm going to make more sense. I need a female to be in that position. I'm going to prioritize getting a certain population of females in here to do that. So let's make that happen. Then we'll figure out the rest of it, and we'll just take the best from that pile, you know? So sort of prioritizing that sort of like gender normative sort of standard versus like making everything like neutral. Of course, I'm talked more than I wanted to on this topic. I'm sorry. I don't want to hijack the conversation. I just think it's a really good topic, and happy to talk about it more later, but just wanted to kind of throw that out there, that I do think it's going to take like top-down leadership.
A question, real quick question, follow up on that, Julia, is when you were talking about the wicket, I mean, both you and William were talking about the necessary wickets. And I'm harkening back to my own experience, Air Force a long time ago, when they were saying, you know, women could not become fighter pilots, could not become pilots because of certain wickets they had put up that had nothing to do with the mission. Like, do we put, I mean, when we talk about wickets, do we often look at, are these wickets necessary, or are they exclusionary by design?
Yeah. I would say within SEAL training, like, they're not exclusionary at all. It's like, it's very arbitrary. Like, if you want to get a SEAL contract, you have to swim 500 meters, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, mile and a half. It's like, you meet that and you meet the ASVAB score, you're gonna get an opportunity. So women could not be SEALs. I think within the past 3 years, they just repealed that. So now it's open to, you know, whomever. And I think as long as they don't change the standards. So, like I said, they're very arbitrary. I think a woman could get through it and she would be accepted just like anybody else. Where when they start tweaking with standards, that is the main calling card of the SEAL teams, is everybody went through the same training. So, you know, we're all on the same page. It doesn't matter, white, black, brown, yellow, you know, it doesn't matter, gender, whatever. Like, if you meet the standard, you're welcomed in. And I think that will continue to be the case. But if they're to start to say, okay, you know, black man, you only got 10 push-ups, white man, you got 20, and woman, you have 5. It's like, now everybody's looking at each other and you have that infighting, and it's no longer that cohesive unit anymore. So I think, yeah, as long as they keep the standards, they don't care. And that's how it was when I came through. Like when I first got to my SEAL team, they were like, yeah, we know you're black. We don't give a F. So like meet the standard and or you're gonna be gone. Cause just because you get to the SEAL team, they're constantly testing you. So even when you're there, and I've seen 5-year SEALs who've done 2 deployments to Iraq get kicked out because they had safety violations on, when we're doing, SWAT type runs. So they're like, yeah, you're not meeting the standard anymore. You're gone. And this dude, he's an E6 SEAL. So yeah, they don't care at all as long as you're meeting the standard.
I wonder, like, here's what I mean to say. It's interesting to me to see what kinds of things that the military emphasizes standards for, though, where like I remember like I had some female soldiers in my platoon that like would try to apply for schools like that like air assault, for example, or something like that, where they're up against like the same like scoring standards, like these application procedures that they have, and it's like at a certain point you wonder like why doesn't the military like really see like is this kind of standard what is important for this job? And I do think that there is an appeal in having like everybody on the same page. Like that makes so much sense. But I guess I don't think the military does enough to like challenge itself in this regard, or like why not send one soldier, or like see if a soldier with lower thresholds like meets the same requirement or passes the school, to try to like see like what of these qualifications really matters. Because I've seen it where it's like women we're not getting as the same opportunities as men to be able to go to these schools, that if you need these schools to be able to get promoted. And so now it's like that's how you get your promotion points. And so now there's just like a snowball effect of exclusion in some regard of opportunity within the military, because like I think that's something that needs to be more critically thought about and like maybe tested a bit in some regards. I don't know anything about the SEAL team. I think that's like the far extreme version where it's like maybe this is something we don't want to mess with, but in stuff where it's like like these schools that we send people to really like on the down low, like to get their promotion points, like stuff like that is where I think there's a lot more playroom to kind of test some of this stuff out.
Well, I think what you're saying, and well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but kind of going back to Phil's original question, it's like there's not enough of that feedback loop to say that this performance is now informing what we're testing on, right? And so like what in a perfect world, right, you would say, I would take William and his unit, and I would look at his unit, and I would look across all of the different metrics, and I'd say, this is what makes a successful SEAL. And how do I test those things? And then I use that to inform the recruiting process, which then informs the selection process, which then informs so on and so forth. But I mean, there's not, I think, a lot of opportunity to do that sort of like critical analysis and stuff in there. But yeah. But yeah, I think what you're talking about, though, honestly, is just like this systemic discrimination, right? Like that's the stuff that I'm sure Stephanie has had to deal with, and I'm sure I have. And I'll tell a quick war story too, if you don't mind. But like I was sitting around my office with my husband one day, and I said, it's so interesting. Like, and I was telling him about how when I became a battalion commander, I as soon as I was selected, my status in the unit changed. Right? Like people were saying hello to me in the hallway, people I'd never met before. Oh, congratulations, nice. And like I was all of a sudden objectively in the cool club, right? Because I had been selected, and I'm like objectively in the cool kids club. I literally get a seat at the table now. So I take command, I'm literally having a seat at the table, and I'm just like in awe. I'm like, how did this happen? I'm like, this is so cool. I'm a battalion commander, this awesome unit. And like, I'm in the cool kids club. Like I literally have a voice, and I have the same vote as every other guy that's in this room, as the Green Beret that sits there, as the Intel guy that sits there. Like I have the same exact vote as all the other guys in this room. And I'm like, and I'm no different than I was yesterday. I'm no different than I was, and like, so how did I, and then I looked at my husband, I was like, yeah, but what does that mean when we don't have like an African-American or something sitting here? He's like, are you are you telling me you're just figuring out like systemic racism? I'm like, yes. I'm just it's like, what happens when we don't have all those voices there? Like, oh my gosh, it was like learning it like as I was going through it, and I realized, yes, it's just crazy that like instantly, like when you have those positions sort of like laid out in those systems and you don't have equal opportunity for all these folks to get there, then yeah, your voices like are just not heard. So
True.
Yeah, I would say, to offer just slight pushback, at least from our, like you said, maybe we're way off on the left on the bell curve, but they've done multiple analyses and psych evals on guys and classes going through, and they can't pinpoint it. Like, what is it that, okay, we'll go in the inner cities and we'll do more swim classes and stuff like that. And what I've noticed is the biggest trait, because you'll see one guy, he's like 5'4", 130, and he makes it. And we had one guy, we literally named him Captain America, and he looked like the guy who played in Captain America. I don't know his name, but he quit the first week. Like, Captain America, he was Mr. Captain America, and all the instructors loved him, and he quit. So it's just like with us, I mean, maybe different jobs, but certain jobs that are, way on the left side or way on the right side of that proverbial bell curve, then I think it's extremely hard to lax or just change standards and then help that coupled with inclusion. It's like you're messing with fire, because the standard is there for a reason. These are hard individuals, and they go through this and they say, okay, we went through it, kind of deal. So yeah, what I noticed is, what I tell everybody is, the people who make it through are the guys, and hopefully women someday, like, they didn't tell that they wanted to quit. Like, I tell people every day, I wanted to quit every day. I just never told anybody about it. So I just kept it to myself. So I think that's the biggest thing, is like stubborn. People who are stubborn, and where they can't accept, failure, or they're very, I mean, everyone here has that kind of trait where it's like attention to detail, all that stuff, but it's what it really boils down to is like, you don't want failure, and the pain of like long failure is worse than that momentary, okay, my physical pain. So that's the main trait, and that branches out to all the different things that people have done here, whether it's computer science or engineering or stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's the same thing.
I want to challenge anybody who's listening to ask a question. So the chat box has been pretty empty, and nobody's unplugged their mics yet. So do we have any questions for folks? Just the breadth of experiences on the panel here is truly breathtaking, as far as rank and experiences and jobs and what they saw and where they came from and everything else. So does anybody have any questions for our panelists?
William, can I ask you, were you a West Coast SEAL or an East Coast SEAL? Because that Pacific Ocean is cold.
Oh, yes, indeed. I was East Coast, so SEAL Team 4. So it's even East, odd West. And then we have Hawaii, which is like dive guys. Nobody wants to go there. But yeah, I was East Coast, and we're a little more stringent over there, East Coast, because the unspoken about team who's out there, they're there, so we kind of piggyback off what they do. So it's very more stringent, and West Coast guys, they're out surfing and stuff like that. So they don't want to be SEALs. they're in mute. They're starring in the movies, and those are the West Coast guys.
Thank you.
Did anyone go to college first and then join after college?
Yeah, I think there's all of us, maybe. I don't know. Most of us. So is there a follow-up question for that?
No, just kind of wondering when you went to when the military hit. I think, was it before college, after college? When your service time was?
After.
Yeah, same. I did college after the military.
I did my freshman year, and then one of the 2008 recession hit, so I joined after that for more security for the future.
I don't know if this is like related to diversity, but this is just something that's interesting that it makes me think of this question, is that like some jobs in the military don't have the opportunity for necessarily for the soldiers to like use their education benefits, I think. So like in my MOS, I was aviation, and we were just always on 24-hour ops trying to get a deployment. And so like for 6 years straight, it was miserable. And yeah, so like you would ask like, can I take a class? Can I do this? And like the answer was just no. And so I think like that's a problem that I don't know if that's being addressed now, because I've been out quite some time, but I think that does create some barriers for people, that because like we do know that like certain demographics of people do tend to aggregate in certain jobs, like, and so I think that is an issue.
Just to answer the question quickly from before, I did ROTC when I was in college. So I joined after college.
Where'd you do your undergrad?
I was at the University of Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry if there's noise. My four-legged friend just decided to join us from outside. Hi there, Molly. I have a 1-year-old puppy, and she's a puppy. Oh. So, any other questions? People have other questions? I have probably maybe, looking at time where we are, might be our last one. I'd like you guys to talk maybe a little bit about when we're faced with, and I think we brought it up a little bit, when we're faced with issues in our country right now, Black Lives Matter movement, when we're talking about diversity a lot, when we're talking about how to make a more equitable workplace, when we're talking about even instances of covert and overt racism, how can military folks help? How do you, where you see your roles as helping out, or do you, or where can we as veterans even help out when we talk about the society and helping the society kind of heal and what we can do with what we've learned? What do you think? Big question.
Well, I would just like to caveat that with when the protests, I mean, I'm sure stuff is still happening, but a few months back when everything was, wow. I had friends that obviously knew I'm in the service, and I was in the service, and they wanted to hear from me as like the spokesperson of military, like, so how does the military feel about X, Y, and Z? And I have friends that are Black that during that time was also the first time that they had their peers asking them, like, how do you, like, trying to be a spokesperson for Black people, and that's not the way to ask at all, right? So I would just like to put that out there before anybody answers and asks more questions about that to other people.
I was going to piggyback off of that and say that if veterans are to try to do it in the to try to like help work on systemic racism. I think yes, I agree with Stephanie that this should, it's something that you need to do like as yourself. I don't think politicizing, at least in my opinion, your veteran status is like a healthy or like respectful thing to do, especially when it comes to issues like this. But that being said, I think that the way to support people or to help fix it is like to support it if you do, like which you should. And so like I saw this article of this Marine soldier that when the protests started happening, he got in full dress. He had been out for some time now, got in full dress and stood outside of I forget which memorial it was. In the middle of the heat, his shoes had melted to the ground, and he had a Black Lives Matter sign around his neck with like a tape or something over his mouth or something like that to like symbolize his support. And I don't necessarily think that like everybody needs to go to that extreme to show it, but I think like in a word to answer your question, Phil, in my opinion, I think that as a veteran that you can just like show your support like as yourself, as a person, and that I think that's at the very least what we can do to help.
Anybody else?
I would just offer that, I'm still active duty and I'm going to be in another active duty place here soon. But I think that there's like a tendency among the military to sometimes try to be so apolitical that it sort of becomes paralyzed and doesn't do anything. And that is also a decision that doesn't always have great ramifications, I find. So I think that one of the ways that we can support just like as individuals is like, yes, I get that the administration or the post commander or wherever it is that you're working may not have denounced, some recent murder or something like, or, hasn't outwardly supported the Black Lives Matter movement or hasn't addressed this very present issue. But like me as an individual I've certainly reached out to a lot of the folks that I've worked with that I know were directly impacted by the protests of the summer. And just like as a human being was reaching out and be like, are you doing okay? If you're not doing okay, like that's okay. Like, let's talk. And like, what kinds of things can we be, or just reaching out, I think like on a human level. I think for me, at least I've been told it was helpful and somewhat effective, at least like now that I know I'll be working with a lot more conventional folks and stuff. But yeah, I think it's maybe just like a little bit of like resistance to being so apolitical that we become paralyzed.
All right. We're getting close to time. Is there final questions or final comments or things you're thinking about or? Yes, no, maybe so. Sounds of
I would just,
yes.
Yeah, I would just offer encourage. I'm not sure the ethnicities of people on the call without pictures or whatever, but I would encourage to be the change you want to see. And what I mean by that is I grew up thinking like GI Joes were SEALs and stuff like that. So I saw that there weren't many people in it. I said, all right, I'm gonna go do it. So yeah, if you want to see diversity, encourage maybe some of your friends or youth or whatever to branch out their view of, because where I'm from, it's sports. It's like you play basketball, football, and I've gone back and I've reached out and said, hey, there are different avenues that you can take. 'Cause I didn't know growing up. So that's part of it. And then the other aspect of it is, yeah, when I get, certain white friends calling or, different ethnicities calling me like, hey, Black Lives Matter, what's up, dude? And you good? And I'm like, yeah, I was good before. There's nothing has changed. Like, bruh, this has been this way. So I've been telling you this is going on. So that's part of it. So yeah, it's cool to reach out. But what I always used to say, or what I used to say to people who call me or text me, is if you're not willing to say this in an open forum, don't call me, man. Like, what I mean by that is, like, if you aren't willing to say there's a problem, or if you're not willing to post it on social media, like, don't call me. All right. Like, so I may be a little bit more abrasive sometimes, but that's just how I feel. Where it's like, yes, it's cool to check up on me, but if you don't go out actively and aren't willing to do something like that, then part of it is cool, but yeah, you don't really see it. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you so much. Great. Any final words? Thank you very much for your talk today. I enjoyed listening to you. I enjoyed listening to about your service and our service. Happy belated Veterans Day to all of our panelists. It's a pleasure to know you and to have served. I do appreciate your time here today.